Hi there, and welcome to Fuzzy on the Details. My name is Fuzzy, and get ready to drink from the fire hose because Marvel has dropped a ton of information today about the Marvel Multiverse role-playing game, including some brand new errata, a new installment of Tony's Workshop, and the latest developers update, which has amazing new details about the X-Men expansion. We've got a lot to cover. If there's something you'd like me to tackle in greater detail, or if you have any questions at all about any of these documents, let me know in the comments. If there's enough interest, I can put together a Q&A type video to address them. First off, let's review the errata. If you're a demiplane user, these changes are already reflected in the system. As always, this is one of the nice benefits of having the rules digitally. A quick look at Roll20 suggests they've done the same. The new errata is mixed in with all of the older stuff in an updated document. What I've done here is extract all of the new stuff so we don't have to rehash what's come before. The first note is about the edge rule, and they've added a nice little piece of advice here, an explicit reminder that you don't have to re-roll the lowest die when you've got an edge. It is also a reminder that you should know the target number that you're trying to hit, otherwise you wouldn't be able to consider the odds in your head like they're doing in this example. This is advice I first gave in my very first video, and I last gave in my most recent video, so it's safe to say I'm 100% behind this additional text. Next up is a long overdue bit of errata concerning karma and recovery and how you calculate how much health or focus you recover. This is also something I discussed in my very first video, as this was a bit of unofficial errata that Matt Forbeck talked about in a Facebook post months ago. It is nice to see this finally made formal, as I know there were still some folks out there who were waiting on something official to change the way they were interpreting this rule at their table. The addition to the falling rules is in the last two lines here. I imagine the very last line was in response to reports of people trying to game the system a little bit, indefinitely delaying inevitable falls. I have no problem with this explicitly being called out. For combat reflexes, the change is simple. It goes from each turn to each round. I'm okay with this because this aligns with the definition of reactions, which states each character also gets one reaction per round. It's good to have that consistency. But I'm curious. Do you all consider bonus rounds to be rounds for the purposes of reactions? I do. I think initially I was a little undecided on it because I was letting rules from other systems maybe infect my way of thinking a little bit. Let me know in the comments how you handle this at your table, and if this standardization around the word round changes your approach any. For Iron Will, the original text reads, enemies have trouble on ego attacks to control the character's mind or influence their behavior, and they get an edge on ego checks to break free of mind control or other compulsions. So by eliminating the word ego, this is now useful against attacks like the command power, which rely on logic. Totally okay with this because I don't see a ton of players taking this trait, so this probably helps it be a more appetizing choice. Hexbolt has an updated duration of instant, which is the same as elemental burst or blast. I think this is a pretty straightforward and necessary change. For stilt steps, the duration is now concentration. This means whenever you lose consciousness or run out of focus, or otherwise can't focus, you won't be able to use this power. There is a limit to how many powers you can concentrate on at once, so you'll have to keep that in mind with this new change. Some plasticity powers are permanent, and some are concentration. I don't have any theories about why this one power in particular was targeted for this change. How about you? For Winds of Watum, the duration is also now concentration. This makes sense. If you're going to restrict the movement of foes, you're going to need to keep that power up and running. For America Chavez, all of these 6 powers were previously under one power set. Now that they're under 2, America loses 1 power that she gained from having a higher thematic bonus. Hence, the loss of ground-shaking stomp. This is a pretty straightforward fix. Now let's move on over to the second installment of Tony's Workshop. If you're not familiar, this is a place where devs share some experimental rules with us, things that might make their way into a future book or into errata. Last installment gave us things like the Getting Schooled ranking up system, henchman rules, and a new target number for webbing, all of which are things that I've embraced at my table. If you use any of these rules in a game, please share your feedback with Marvel. I think we'll all have some initial reactions to them, and I'm certainly going to share mine now, but the best kind of formal feedback from Marvel is that which is based on actual gameplay, so please try these out when you can and be free with your feedback to Marvel. There's a place you can do that on the website. I'll include a link in the description. First up, we got a little bit of a nerf to shield and protection powers. Now, I don't think this is going to be a popular change, but I do think it's a fair one. And you might have gotten a glimpse into my thinking if you watched my actual play video earlier this week. My daughter used Elemental Protection 1, and it was really useful. I even pointed out how valuable it was for her to only spend 5 focus and save herself so many points of health damage. Here's why I think this change is a good idea. Many characters would have zero interest in the higher levels of protection if Protection 1 saved you from all incoming damage, regardless how many points of damage it did. Especially if you could bring up another instance of this power if you had another reaction to spare. So this kind of approach here and the suggested new rules, I think makes much more sense. I just don't know how I'm going to break this to my kid. For lightning actions, there's also a suggested nerf for you to swap a reaction for an action or vice versa, instead of getting an extra one of each. And I think this one falls into the unpopular but fair category for me. I've seen a lot of power builds out there that utilize this power, and the one on the next slide. And anytime you see the power gamers all talking about the exact same options, you probably know you need to reel things in a bit. But one reason this power in particular I think had to be nerfed is because it has no prerequisites other than rank, meaning it's all too easy to get via the surprising power trait. So yeah, again, I think this might be an unpopular opinion, but I totally love this change. But then again, I don't have a lot of people at my table that really try to game the system, so this is going to have very little impact on the way I play the game or the way I narrate it. And now's probably a good time for a reminder. If you and your narrator don't like these changes, these are not official changes to the game yet. You do not have to accept them. You do not have to playtest them. Especially if you've got characters that are really built around these powers, and it would impact your enjoyment of the game. This is your table, your game. Do not make any changes you're not all comfortable with. Next up on the nerf train, energy absorption. The only change here is the last line, saying that the power can't be used again until the focus is spent. Again, I don't have a problem with this because I think this is in response to folks gaming the system and trying to really artificially stock up on focus points, maybe preparing for a big combat. Let's think about how Bishop uses his power in X-Men 97. In the first episode, he shields Storm from some damage and then dishes it right back immediately. When Cyclops powers him up in the Inferno episode, Bishop immediately unleashes it. So this, I think, is the spirit of the power, and I haven't personally encountered anyone who really tried to abuse it, so again, this is another nerf that I can totally support. Next, let's take a look at Timeout. This power needed to be addressed because as originally written, it said Quicksilver pays 30 focus, but only a rank 6 character can spend 30 focus at one time, and Quicksilver is only rank 4. In addition to addressing this obvious problem, the new text also increases the amount of focus it takes to use if you activate this power multiple times in a row or in the same combat. So this power was another very popular option for some builds, but I'd have to see how things play out at the table before I formulate an opinion on this. The idea of the escalating power cost is interesting, but it is a new concept and it deliberately breaks the rule of how many focus points you can spend at a time. But again, I'd have to playtest this to see how it would work in practice. So something to keep in mind, in previous errata, Timeout, Timeout Bubble, and Timeout Tag were all grouped together and had a similar text change that would benefit from what we're seeing here with Timeout. Why did they do it that way? It could be a miss, or maybe they're just segregating Timeout to collect feedback on only one of the powers, and then we'll roll a change out to all of them at a later date. Time will tell. Get it? Time will... never mind. Next up, the Dream Dimension. As mentioned, this power set would be a great one for antagonists like Nightmare. Actually, I'd love to see these rules as part of a Halloween-themed adventure with Nightmare, kind of like a higher rank version of the murder world that Time forgot. That's a great way to start an adventure. Just suck up a bunch of characters, put them in a strange place, and have them fight to get out. I can also see myself creating the Demon Bear from the New Mutants and using some of these rules for that. And finally, looking at these powers here, it really makes me want to create a build for Morpheus of the Endless from Neil Gaiman's Sandman, the only DC comic I ever collected. Now let's dive into all the amazing things we learned from the developer's update. First, we're going to start with the full table of contents for the X-Men expansion. So we've got sections on individual teams here: X-Men, X-Factor, X-Force, Alpha Flight, and the Marauders. I've got a soft spot for Alpha Flight, so I'm really excited for that one. And we can see that each one of these chapters has specific sections on histories, locations, guidance on playing and joining these teams, and adventure hooks. And I also really like that each one of these chapters has the individual author credited. I know that a lot of people worked on Cataclysm of Kang, so it's nice to see each contributor recognized more specifically here than they were in that book. Speaking of which, every one of these authors also contributed to Cataclysm of Kang. So all of them are familiar with the system. Nice to see. All right, second page of the table of contents, we can see that the Exiles are the final team. And we can also see we've got a couple dozen pages dedicated to other worlds and other times, which is great. And 40 plus pages of new rules. And a basic vehicles table? A basic vehicles table? New conditions, origins, traits, powers, random encounters? This has got a ton of what I was hoping for and expecting, but so many surprises too. Did I mention there's a basic vehicles table? All right, my friends, I'm going to need your help here. What are the sections here that you would like me to break down first when this comes out? You want me to just go chapter by chapter or start with the rule stuff? That's my gut, but let me know what you think. Here's the full list of characters, and I've got to call attention to one of these names in particular for my man HavoCan45 in the comments, who would have started a riot if Havoc wasn't on this list. Now, there are two names that were on my wish list that I don't see here. That's Anole and Prodigy. But there's a note in the developer's article that says if there was something that we were expecting in this book but didn't get, it may show up in a future product soon, which is a good segue to some confirmations and some new information we got about upcoming products. So in just about 1 week, we'll be getting more information about the X-Men expansion, the full X-Force chapter. Now, the full book will be out on August 7th, if you believe IGN, or August 6th, if you believe Amazon. Then, on July 17th, we get Deadpool Roleplays the Marvel Universe, and we've learned that there will be 11 new character profiles in there. So what do you think my chances are of getting Anole and Prodigy in that book? The relaunch of NYX is happening in July. Those two characters are going to be on the team. What do you think my odds are? And finally, we've got the Spider-Verse expansion coming out in March 2025. I'll be honest, I'm kind of on such a big X-Men kick right now, I'm not complaining about having to wait half a year between hardcovers. I really want to enjoy all of this new content before I get sucked into a new hardcover. But I really am looking forward to all that book has to offer. All right, my true believers, that was a lot. I am really excited to hear about your thoughts on all of this. And remember, if you've got any immediate questions, please let me know, and I'll think about getting a Q&A video up in the not too distant future to answer all of them. As always, thank you so much for your support and all of your great feedback, and I hope you guys have a great day.